Onion Cycles podcast is about thought provoking, emotion evoking, action driven, step by step guidance to explore the unique, glorious, and wonderful ocean of your being. Because healing is a multi layered process of getting to know oneself. Become the self empowered empiric researcher by discovering the unique layers of your existence. With your host, Nadine Alma, welcome to the Holistic Healing Hub. Welcome to the Onion Cycles podcast. Hello and welcome back, my beloved fellow healing onions. I'm so happy you're back with me here in this beautiful space, in this safe space of vulnerability, of healing, of getting to know ourselves without judgment, with compassion and love for who we are and who we have become throughout our lives. I am announcing this next episode being part of the Four Bodies series. We are on body 3. We are tackling the topic of the emotional or feeling body today. And this is a topic close to my heart because upon reflecting back on my own healing journey, I discovered that the emotional and feeling body was one that came paradoxically both easily to me, but also very hard as well. What I mean by this is that experiencing the emotions, the stored emotions and traumas, and going into the feeling of it is both easy and hard because first it's easy. I can just cry and let the tears come and just feel it. But if it's done unconsciously and if it's done without intention, attention, care, and compassion, it is not contributing to healing core wounds. It's not contributing to really working through those inflicted pains and alter them so that they eventually become a memory and a experience of strengthening myself and strengthening my confidence, strengthening me in the person that I am. So it is dear to my heart to talk you through this, and I would strongly recommend you checking out the worksheet for this week's episode. You can download that for free on my website www.wonderfinder.org. I will put that in the description, and alongside that, I wholeheartedly recommend you check out a video on YouTube of one of my favorites, one of my personal accompanying spiritual teachers called Teal Swan. I do have to say there is a lot of controversy going on, but then again, the more controversy there is, the more this person does be truthful, authentic, and outspoken in what she is doing. So if it resonates with you, check out the video. She guides you through a whole process and shows you how this process can be actualized within your daily life. So it is a very valuable resource if you feel called to dive deep. With that said, welcome to Story 18, Episode 19. The Four Body series, the emotional or feeling body. It is mostly represented by water, and that is very reflecting and mirroring what we can see in nature as well, because it can be the absolute abyss of a waterfall where the water just falls and falls and falls and there's no control whatsoever. It can also be mirrored and seen in a lake without any ripples on it, and the beauty of a calming, soothing background tickling of a little stream. So, our emotional feeling body represented back in nature has a whole spectrum. What I want to point out first is the difference between emotion and feeling, because most people use those words, and I won't exclude myself from that unintentionally and sometimes even wrong. So, the difference between emotion and feeling is that an emotion is a physiological experience of a feeling, meaning that through neural reactions and through our hormones, we perceive what we then call emotions. We perceive the thought becomes a reality, and between this fine line of a thought becoming an emotion, that is where the feeling is, because the feeling exists beyond the physical body. The feeling is the sensation based perception and the form of awareness. So then it translates into becoming an emotion, a physiological experience. And I find that this distinction alone is absolutely valuable to have in the back of our mind when we do healing work, when we do integration work that is coming up for our emotional patterns, behavioral patterns, for trauma that is stored in that emotional feeling body. The emotional body can also be seen as the interpreter, the translator of the thoughts that are projected by both consciousness and human mind, and seeing it as a accumulation of a feeling, a sensation, and a perception in equal parts contributes to a deeper understanding of how this body interacts with our physical body and our mental body. I loved to dive deep into this subject as well to sort of discern another key element of going into how to heal or how to work with this body, which is the difference between a signature and a state. A signature emotion, a signature feeling is something that comes back into our life. Some would call it a trigger, maybe, because it repeats itself. It's like as long as it is not addressed, as long as it is not integrated or healed, it will return and bring up those quote unquote unwanted emotions and feelings, versus a state is basically an emotion that happens and then has a strong impact. And if we disconnect from it, if we don't acknowledge it, if we push it away, suppress it, then eventually it transforms itself into a signature. And I believe that understanding this also enables us going forward to discern precisely when something happens in our lives that describes a state of feeling, and then if we don't address it, it eventually evolves into a whole signature of feeling. Most things that are signatures now and that are viewed as states are traceable and traceable back to a very early and young age, because the emotional feeling body is basically the body that we experience our whole life through until the age of 8. Apparently, up until the age of 8, this is the main way of how we perceive and how we live this life on this earth in our body, and apart from the physical, obviously. But after that, the mental body is created. So, whenever we work with the emotional and feeling body, it is very hard for us to acknowledge that in our adult mind we don't come up with answers in a cognitive way, because sometimes they would just come up in a feeling, they would just come up in a sensation. They would just not even come up in a clear sentence and a description of a situation, but just a faint memory. And then most of us kick into that mindset of, oh, I can't do this, oh, this is wrong, oh, this is nothing for me, oh, I don't believe in that, oh, this is false. And we then further this fraction between what the actual state of feeling was in that first early memory of disintegrating the emotional body from our experience. And then that deepens the wound, and then that deepens the fraction and prevents thorough healing. With that said, I want to dive straight in to approaching the healing process. And please bear in mind that what I'm saying here, if this doesn't resonate with you, then just click away and just distance yourself from it. The emotional feeling body is, in my experience, one of the hardest things to address, one of the hardest things to do. Some people call it shadow work, other people call it inner child work. It brings up core memories, core wounds. It even makes me tear up now while I'm talking about it a little, because there is still so much for me to do as well, in the sense of remembering. I don't know how it is for you guys out there, but there is a lot of my childhood that I don't remember, and I know that it is stored somewhere within me, and not remembering in my mind now, in the cognitive mind, and not being able to bring up those memories just means that they are suppressed, deeply repressed somewhere in my subconscious, somewhere stored in my emotional, mental body, stored in my physical body, even. So I know there is a lot more work to do, and it might just even take more than just one timeline and more than just one lifetime to work through that. But still, it is the great work. Like I always say in every episode, it is unique to all of us. So please be compassionate, be loving towards yourself. However, I wanted to address this because every trauma that is stored inflicts pain on the other bodies, and eventually this contributes to our lives not being our lives, really, because they are distorted through that looking glass of what happened, stored unconsciously, and then replaying out in our lives in the form of pain, in the form of guilt, in the form of shame, in the form of everything that prevents us from living a life of lightness, of love, of joy, of happiness, of all that we actually strive for and wish for. The importance of the feeling body is, like I said, the translator of the observer based consciousness of the mind, what we observe, and then in the first person physical experience based consciousness of the person. So, between observing what we do with our brain and then bringing that into the physical experience based consciousness of who we are. And the importance is also to know that the feeling body is what makes us experience a thought as real. And some of you out there might be able to have this bridge now to what all manifesting techniques are about, and what everyone says about affirmation is that you need to feel as though it's already here and it's already real. And that is basically addressing the emotional body to let that thought be a realization, let that thought become a manifested reality. Secondly, it is important because your sense of life and your feeling based conclusions about life, your interpretations and your emotional trauma are all contained in the feeling body. That means that whatever pain you have stored in there and whatever pain you continue to suppress and not address becomes your reality. And if you have a emotional body that is full of pain and full of guilt and full of shame and full of fear and full of anxiety, the reality you live will be exactly that. Reality is mirrored from that emotional body. So your whole life experience will be that of an unhappy life, of illness, of hard mental challenges, of hard physical challenges. And this will prevent you, keep away the ability of being present in the moment, which is the key to healing emotional body, healing the feeling body, the key to coming out of victimhood consciousness, the key to healing, the key to reintegration, the key for everything is the present moment. So if you're held tight by your fears, by your anxiety, by your trauma, get yourself help and do contribute all the energy and all the love you have towards yourself to get yourself out of that state and become present, and teach yourself to become present first with just 5 minutes a day. And you will see that this gets really addictive. Like, you want to stay present because the present moment is so much more joyful than being troubled by depression causing thoughts about the past or anxiety inducing fears about the future. So please do yourself a favor and practice mindfulness, practice staying in the present moment. Only if we feel, stay with that feeling and go through it, will we really integrate. Otherwise, all of this stored pain and all of these stored quote unquote negative emotions will continuously and consistently come up in our lives and cause trouble, cause relationships to break, cause friendships to break, cause us to feel unhappy, to be unhappy, and to feel like the whole world is against you. So we need to address this, and we need to not sugarcoat it and realize that healing must occur on an emotional and feeling level. We need to address the issues on feeling and emotional level. Thus, I want to start with the first thing we need to do in order to tackle our emotional feeling body, and that is becoming aware of a paradox. The paradox is that in our current way of self help and self improvement and self growth industries, we talk about healing as though this means that we have to fix ourselves. We use the word healing as if to say that something with us is wrong, that we have to disapprove of ourselves, that we are damaged, that we need to be repaired, that by looking at yourself, you see only yourself as being broken and in need of change. I know that in the past episodes I talk only and all the time about healing, but I wanted, especially with this episode, to clarify that if I talk about healing, I really talk about integration, because integration is the new healing. And the way I want to explain this is by asking you to imagine someone saying to you, someone you live with, someone you love, someone that is close to you, maybe even the person that has spent the most time with you throughout your life, looking at you and saying, you are not okay the way you are. You have to be different. Imagine that and how much pain this causes. And this translates exactly to what I want to point out in this episode about the difference between healing as it's used in self-help industries and healing as it is really meant to be viewed as integration. Because in that scenario of your closest beloved person talking to you like that, that is what you do to your emotional feeling body, to yourself, the moment you say, I have to fix myself. You say something is wrong with yourself. That will further the fraction between your emotional feeling body and your cure. Therefore, the first step is to realize And maybe reframe in your mind what healing really truly means. Healing means that we no longer view ourselves as faulty, as broken, as in need of repair, but we view ourselves as fractioned and in need of integration. Which brings me to point two. The same scenario of that beloved person talking to you in a damaging way is now applying in the form of working with your emotional body. You, in that scenario, become the best friend, and you are most concerned and utterly immersed and devoted to have that emotional feeling body be understood, be healed, not interrupted, actively listened to. You are the best friend of your emotional body, of your feeling body. Be present with it. Sit with the emotions, no matter how uncomfortable they are. And if there is huge trauma involved, this isn't done in a day. Rome wasn't built in a day. Give yourself all the time you need and be aware that the heightened emotions, the trauma that comes up, can be so intense that you might consider doing that in a therapy session. Ask your therapist if they would help you through this process. You might even consider asking a best friend, a person to be with you, sit with you, just be there if they're needed, not to be an active part, because what is really important to understand here is that you're working with yourself. You're working with yourself internally, and this is you standing up for yourself, you being the parent, you being the best friend that your emotional body needs. So there's no interference. It's just if you feel more safe addressing something that you know has a deep core wound, this might be something to make the environment, to make the frame of the experience a little safer, a little more comfortable, a little more um, secure for yourself. And again, in this second part, you imagine yourself as being your best friend. You imagine yourself as being there for you no matter what. There are no conditions on this kind of love for yourself. And then you go into this feeling. You really start the exercise by befriending yourself, by appreciating yourself, by respecting the emotion, respecting and not denoting it, not making it feel small or unnecessary. The opposite. Your emotional body in that scenario is of utmost importance. It is the most beloved being. It is what matters most to you in that moment. You're not interrupting it. You're feeling it totally. And let them show you what they want you to see. Listen to them, respect them. Every time you have an intense emotional reaction, or at least once a day, go into what comes up. Find a quiet place, find a comfy place. This is a continuous exercise, a consistency practice. Like I said previously, consistency does look unique to anyone. And I get that there are situations out there where it might not be possible to give this feeling then and there. It's adequate space and time. But there is the friend coming back, and that friend is going to tell that feeling, I'll come back to you later because I love you and I want to give you all the time, all the love, all the affection, intention, attention I have. Please bear with me, I'll come back to you. And that is when later, once you have that space and can give you that space, you go into that emotion. You can tell yourself, once you are going into that exercise, that you're in a safe space. You can make it very comfortable for you. You can light a candle, you can make it a ritual, a very intentional ritual once a day of taking time out of busy lives and everyday occurrences with the intention of healing and addressing your emotional body. Trust the process, trust yourself. You are an eternal being living the human experience. If you attempt to do this exercise and if you're intentional with it, you can trust yourself completely. What will show up is what is there to heal. The layers might get deeper, my beloved onions. We know that. There might be a top layer and then a second, third, fourth, whatever, however many layers. Trust the process and trust the layer that comes up, and just really trust yourself and trust your emotional body and trust your strength that you are able to be fully with this emotion, to observe it, to go through it no matter how uncomfortable it is, and maybe even talk to it, like I said before, with some sentence like, I am completely here with you now. And remember to breathe in and out through the nose. Get yourself back to breathing whenever you recognize and realize that you have held your breath because the emotion was getting too strong. Try to prevent yourself from scratching or pushing down tears or wiping away tears. Those are physical responses to making this feeling go away and making the intention, the attention, the awareness towards that feeling go away by the physical body interfering with the process. Hold all of that in your consciousness while you go into this state. And when you feel like this feeling is very intense, but you stick with it, you continue to breathe in and out of your nose. You continue to repeat, I'm completely here with you now, or any other sentence that feels this emotion requires, that feels like you want to tell that emotion. You can talk to it because you are the friend of your emotional body, remember? And then you have 3 questions. And these 3 questions are, how do I feel? Meaning bringing the awareness to what is. How did I last experience this same feeling? We're not looking for an answer from the cognitive mind. We are allowing to be offered an answer, like sitting down by a stream and then suddenly a leaf is brought to you by this stream and lands on the tip of your toes. And again, the third question would be, when did I first experience this same feeling in my life? Again, a stream and a leaf is being brought to you. There is no pressure of coming up with a concise cognitive description of a situation. I also told you that most core traumas are stored before the age of 8, meaning that there might not even be a cognitive, concise description of a situation, but rather just a sensation, a an emotion, a feeling of a situation. This is also why people call it inner child work, is because most times when we address something that happened to us that day, we can trace that back to our childhood when we felt abandoned, for example. And then once you come to that point of having asked yourself that last question, when did I first experience the same feeling in my life? And you come up with a sensation, and if you feel exhausted and if you feel like you want to not continue this process, then tell your emotion and tell that very specific feeling that you will come back to this and that you now need to go away, but that it is not abandoned and that you will not forget and that you will come back. Give yourself reassurance, give yourself kindness and appreciation. However, if you go through and if you go further and if you stay in this state, so then you are able to actually change the blueprint of your emotional experience. And that is the absolute beauty of this work, because envision a tree. What you're doing is you're affecting all the branches that has been spread out, all the symptoms, the root of everything that is constantly reoccurring, bringing up that same feeling over and over again, and you're changing it. Because the third part of all of this is basically changing a memory, altering a core memory. And what you will do is you will basically just talk with whatever comes up in that situation. If you're a baby, if you're a child, if you're a fetus, if you are whatever in that situation, you become the guardian of that little thing, and you communicate with it. You ask what it needs. You go into the feeling of what this precious little bundle of joy that is you needs from you in order to alter this memory. For example, if you feel abandoned in a crib, maybe you want to be picked up, maybe you wanted to be played with, maybe you wanted to be held. Maybe you say to that little bundle of joy, I will put you in a carrier and I will carry you around with me wherever I go, and you will never be abandoned again. Obviously, I can't tell you what will come up for you. I can't guide you through this process. This is something that is advanced in a healing work. But seeing as every one of us is so special and so beautiful and graceful and unique in their approach to life, I trust that you will be guiding yourself through this in the most loving manner, in the most kind attitude, with all the compassion you have for yourself, in a manner that you wish you were treated by your dearest and most beloved person. It is intense. That is why this episode is so long, because it is not to underestimate the intensity of this trauma work, of attempting to do this on your own, by yourself. However, know that you are the one that is able to give you a vessel of safety, a vessel of reassurance, a vessel of holding and securing your well-being. You are light, you are vibration, you are the universe reflected in a human body. Trust yourself, trust your intuition, trust the beauty that is you, that is your soul. And I do hope that this episode was of service to you. I do hope that you may share, if you feel called to do so, with the community, if this helped you, if this enabled you to feel more whole, to integrate, to become closer to the person you want to be, to live the life you want to live, to heal. And with that said, I thank you so very much for trusting me with your time, with your energy, with your life force. I am humbled that you have tuned in again this week to know more about the four bodies, and especially the emotional and feeling body of this week's episode. And I send you, with all my heart that I have in my body, all the love in the world. I understand you, I see you, and I love you very much. Until next time, my beloved fellow healing, integrating onions.